Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first Let's Humanize the Workplace in 2026. And I had to come up with something. And first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Vivian Acquah. I'm a certified diversity professional, but also inclusion strategist, but also a CQ facilitator. And I support leaders with removing barriers regarding high performance. And um, I have been approached this particular person who I'm about to introduce in a minute, but I approach her with, people don't know that I'm an ambivert. I have my moments where I'm an extrovert and I have my majority moments where I'm an introvert. So when I approach her, I was in my introvert phase, I want to interview you, but I don't know how and yada, yada. And she was just like, send me the details and let's go, let's do this. And she said, yes, right away. Right. So therefore, I'm also practicing, how nice it wasn't, how respect can can bring you an open doors, but it's not about not applying my niceness. It's more about having the respect and seeing her as the authority figure that she is. I wanted to approach her in the right way, and I'm glad that I did that via Instagram because that's so amazing. And I just want to introduce you, Amira. So let me do a proper introduction. So today it's all about how nice stifles leaders and their team. So it's not about being too nice or being not nice. It's more about, is your niceness holding you back and also your team back, right? So Amira, who is she? She is an author, a professor, and also an MSNBC and Fast Company columnist, but also a person who helps leaders trade performative niceness to real human-centered change, and part strategist, part truth teller, and always rooting for growth. And her book is a must have. It's a must have when you want to boost effective communication, you want to boost effective collaboration. And also for those of you who want to learn more or want to learn how you can approach or deactivate the niceness and use niceness in a way that it's strategized, but also niceness in a way that is effective, reach out to Amira. She's available. Reach out to her because today, this year, it's about building communities, building teams where effective communication and collaboration is key. That's it. Hi, Amira.
Hi, thank you for that very generous intro. And thank you for being the ambivert you are and just reaching out and asking the question. I'm so glad that you did, and that it means we are here together in 2026 having this
Exactly.
conversation.
Exactly. All the way from the West Coast to the
Yeah.
Netherlands. I'm excited to have this conversation. So let me drop the first question. Also, for those of you who are participating online or watching online, I am keeping an eye on my comment section. So if you have any
Mm.
questions for Amira or for myself or for the both of us, drop them in the comments. Don't be shy. We want to know, we want to learn from you. We want to hear from you as well. But first, let me start with the question. What's your definition of humanizing the workplace?
Oh, nice. For me, humanizing the workplace starts with a rejection of this, sort of unspoken rule that people
Mm,
are supposed to be or become something else when we come to work, as if
yeah.
badging in, logging in, and somehow we are then meant to leave our grief, our caregiving responsibilities, our health, our identity, or even our joy sort of at the door. And sometimes I use, metaphors because I learned that way through story and imagery.
Mhm.
And in many ways, our workplaces were designed like factories. And people, however, we're not machines. We are ecosystems, right? We have rhythms, we have seasons, we have limits. And humanizing work means designing systems that acknowledge that reality instead of punishing people for it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
practically, that shows up in small but powerful ways, right? Leaders who ask people, how they are actually doing, and then adjust
Mm,
expectations, adjust the environment accordingly. Policies that are, built for the edges, if you will, instead of the average. and workplace cultures where, you know, psychological safety, the ability to show up, you know, as you choose, isn't just a buzzword, but it's actually a practice that people understand how to implement and do it daily. And so humanizing work isn't about, you know, being soft, it's about being honest. I love that. So on the side, I need to get some of this for every.
This is my silent applause saying snap, 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 because what you are telling, and I also felt that through listening and reading your book, is there is an undercurrent that we need to make more transparent by checking in with each other, but also being transparent. Where's the goal? What do you need from me to succeed? But also, what can I do to help you to succeed, right? So make the unknown clear, transparent, so that we can collaborate with it. And like you said, we are not robots. We are not, you know, plant workers. And also with the day of age within AI, where so many people are fearing that AI is going to take over, I would say train yourself to become more skilled in AI and the use of AI, because that will be a deal maker or deal breaker when you are applying for a job or when you are applying for a new position, but also putting yourself out there. So I wanted to add that one as well.
Love it.
Yeah. What is your favorite song that energizes you while you're working?
This one, it's also my walk-up song. I use at a lot of conferences when they allow one of those. It is called Remember the Name by a group called Fort Minor. And I love it because one of the main lines in the chorus is, it goes, you know, it's 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 10% 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, but 100% reason to remember the name. And so I just like that because it sort of points to this idea that there are all these components that go into being human and to being successful and to showing up. It is a little bit luck, but it's also just sheer willpower. It's some confidence. There's definitely pain, but no matter what, I'm showing up in the way that I choose, and you're going to remember me one way or another. And so that song is my favorite. Remember the Name by Fort Minor is definitely the one that constantly comes to mind.
I'm going to look it up, because for me, it reminds me of Fame, which isn't the same, right? So remember, because it has something, Remember My Name, but I'm going to look it up and see that as well. So let's talk about this niceness, right? A while ago, I had a conversation with Minda Harts, who has a book like Talk to Me Nice. And here you come with the price of nice. There's something there that has to do with nice. So can you explain the difference between being nice and being genuinely kind? And how does that difference affect organizational culture and leadership?
So I think that it, you know, bears repeating over and over again that niceness, in the way that I'm positing in the book, is about comfort, and kindness, which is often what people think of as sort of the cousin or the antithesis of nice. Kindness to me is about care and action. And, you know, nice wants the room and everyone to stay calm. Kind is focused on wanting people to actually be okay and have what they need. Nice avoids friction. Kind is willing to step into friction if it means telling the truth or preventing harm. And I've seen, you know, organizations that are incredibly nice on the surface, right? Very polite, very professional, and yet deeply unhealthy behind the scenes or underneath. Meaning no one says the hard thing. No one names the inequity. No one interrupts these patterns of toxicity. And so to me, kindness, on the other hand, requires courage. And it sounds like clear feedback, fair systems that we audit and assess often and change when needed, and leaders who are willing to say, you know, this isn't working and we need to change it. And one of my one of my favorite metaphors someone actually tweeted about years ago in 2015 is they said the difference between nice and kind is the difference between a Californian and a New Yorker. And if you've been to either place, you'll get it. So let's say that it's winter, it's cold outside, you're in California, and you forgot your jacket. And you're outside and, you pass by someone and you say, oh my goodness, I'm so cold. I forgot my jacket. A Californian would say, oh, that's really sad that you're so cold. I'm so sorry that you're cold. That's nice. But they didn't do anything. There was no action, no care. It's just, some nice fluffy words. That's so sad. If you were in New York, same thing. It's winter. You forgot your jacket and you were walking by and said, oh my gosh, I'm so cold. I forgot my jacket. A New Yorker might stop and say, you're stupid. What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
How could you leave the house without a jacket on? But then they take their jacket off and hand it to you. That's care. That's kindness. What were the words a little gruff and rough around the edges? Sure. They called you stupid. They said, I can't believe you. Don't ever do this again. But they solved a problem for you. They gave you the jacket off of their back. That's true kindness, where it's about care and taking action, not just this sort of surface level, fluffy, nice words and polite.
I mean, call the service level what it is. It's performative. It's performative.
Exactly. It doesn't actually do. What did it do for anyone? Nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
It didn't do anything, but you gave me the jacket off your back. I'll take a New Yorker any day.
Okay.
Even if the message is a little, harsh or tense or rough, but at the end of the day, I'm not cold. And that's what matters. I'm not cold. My problem was solved.
I get it. And then it makes me think of the Dutch being the way sometimes the Dutch people are being perceived, that we are sharp. We can be a little bit direct because we want to remove the fluff and tell people what it is. And it doesn't always go well, right? When it comes with a person who comes from a different culture, who's not accustomed to that directness as well. So I get what you're saying, but in everything that you're doing, add the level of respect in it. You can be nice and still be harmful. You can be, you can be direct and still be harmful as well. Yeah.
Exactly. Very true.
So what are some common ways leaders unknowingly use niceness to avoid discomfort or, like I said, the difficult or courageous conversations?
I mean, the biggest one is the silence that happens, right? Silence sort of dressed up as professionalism. And, very often I encounter leaders who say things like, now isn't the right time, or, let's take that offline, when what they really mean is, I don't know how to sit with this discomfort and I don't know how to engage in this difficult conversation. So let's just not do it. Another one is over empathizing without acting, kind of like the metaphor I just gave of like the nice words or empathizing, sure, but there's no action. You can say all the right words, but you change nothing for your situation or your team. And that's too often, I think, what happens, because, I think it's rare that leaders, especially leaders of people, are actually given the training and the tools to have difficult conversations and to manage the human element of what happens in the workplace. And that's not always intuitive, and it's not always inherent or natural to all of us. Sometimes you need, to be with someone who has had those experiences and have those tools and those ways of being and leading imparted to you. And so many managers, we know this in every workplace, there are many managers of people who were promoted into their role because they were a great individual contributor, but not necessarily because they know how to people well, or because they know how to manage and be human with people. And how do you construct psychological safety? How do you both empathize with your team, but also make sure progress is moving forward? And again, those skills aren't always very inherent to people, and it's not easy. It is just that, skills. And to get skills, you have to go find them and then practice them. You don't just wake up with them. And so I think that's a lot of the harm that's happening in the workplace, is that we tend to lean towards silence and sweeping things under the rug because there's that discomfort of, I don't know what to do. And it's okay that you don't know what to do. What's not okay is not then admitting it to yourself and then saying, what do I have to do now to go get that skill? And that's what we need more managers to do. Because, you know, this niceness, it shows up as this sort of a feedback, and leaders think that they're being kind by, you know, for example, like in your annual review, softening the message, right? But what they're actually doing is, you know, leaving someone confused and unsupported. That clarity that comes with practicing something other than niceness, it can feel uncomfortable in the moment, yes, but ambiguity, softening messages and feedback, that causes more long-term harm. So that sort of momentary discomfort that you're running away from is actually the thing that you need to lean into.
I agree. And I have two situations, because I do believe that what you were sharing regarding managers not being equipped or not having the tools to conduct difficult conversations or courageous conversations, right? And also, there's something upon their managers to provide that space, but also I do believe that when a manager is new, or maybe they aren't new, but they haven't had the proper training, that you should invest in yourself. If your company is not providing that budget, find out ways how you can invest in yourself so that you can become a better leader. And on the other hand as well, when it comes to practicing courageous conversations, there are so many platforms available there to practice and train that muscle, because it's a muscle that needs training, right? It's just like going into the gym, which everybody now wants to go in January, but we also have to make sure that we keep maintaining that muscle as well. So one of the things that I support leaders with, or support their teams with, is using virtual reality, where you're not stepping on anybody's toes, but you are practicing and training the muscle. And also, in a way, you are unlocking empathy in a way that you learn to understand that your lived experience or your view of things is not always universal, right? So having that mindset and understanding that the way you are approaching things, maybe it's because you have a little bit more privileges or less barriers in your way, and you cannot assume that because you did it, somebody else can do it. They can feel inspired by it, but it's not per se that because you did it, they can do it as well.
That's right. That's right. You know, it made me think of this interesting stat I learned of last year, is across the globe, typically managers of people in workplaces receive on average about 2 hours of training in a calendar year. And when I think about, you know, I'm here in the US, in California. In California, we're required to do 3 hours of harassment training alone every year. And so I always ask people, if on average, we're only receiving 2 hours of training, how much of that training do you think is dedicated to things like psychological safety, having courageous conversations? Because not much of it. So much of it is on sort of the state or country or federally required trainings of like harassment. But there are all of these other human skills, these people skills of leading people in the workplace that you do need training for, that organizations are not prioritizing as a part of what they offer to their leaders of people. And so you're right. It's the organizations need to take the responsibility to invest in order to really create workplace cultures where people are supported, they are seen, and they can be their best and thrive and be productive because they have good managers and a good culture where they can show up. And that's just not happening. And so it's unfortunate that so many of us have to like go out and find it for ourselves, you know. And there are a lot of, like you said, ways you can do it, and you can do it free, like listen to a podcast like this, go to your local library and pick up a great leadership book that someone has recommended, or just be in conversation with like-minded, leaders who can tell you about their experiences and what they did and the actions they took. That at least gives you some ideas for how you can then apply that in your workplace if you're leading other human beings in your role.
And also, when you are listening to a podcast or reading a book or listening to an audiobook, make sure that the experts that you're reading from have a diverse background, right? Because I am very deliberate in this year and also previously in selecting and choosing the thought leaders that show up here, because in the curriculum of leadership at the moment right now, I'm missing the voices of women. I'm missing the voices of women of color that are adding a different element, perspective to elevate yourself when it comes to cultural diversity, but also cultural intelligence in general, right? Because given the fact that so many people have different backgrounds, come from different spaces, have a different learning and lived experience as well, they all come to the workplace, and we expected everybody to behave kumbaya without having any guidelines or demystify my way of working, because I'm an early person in the sense of I'm an early bird, and maybe somebody else is a night owl, right? So recently I wrote something about that, having that connaissance of where people are coming from without them showing their vulnerability. That's what I apply also with cultural intelligence as well, without people having to disclose themselves in a vulnerable space, but knowing how to better collaborate better. So I see your book and what I do, but also with so many books that I've read lately, I see them adding and stretching the leadership muscle. But if we are only reading books, and I'm not saying that this is not a haterade regarding white men. I'm just sharing that we need to diversify our perspectives, diversify who we are reading books from, what kind of books we are reading. I also liked, maybe people will disagree with me, I don't know, but I do like the latest book from Brene Brown, where she's sharing different voices from different people.
Strong ground.
And I just love that she is not only talking about herself, but also sharing the light with other people as well. And I hope to see that more of that as well. So thank you.
I agree. Yeah, no, strong ground. Every chapter in her book is a different voice from a different leader. I appreciated that too. Is like, he's the named author, but it's really a series of authors who, helped her with each chapter of their lived experiences.
Exactly.
Yes, we need to see so much more of that. Like, you have to expand your universe and expand your world, because, you're going to learn so much from people who are so unlike you. And it's just a good viewpoint to have as a leader, is to go and to seek out what is different, what is, not what you would do, and learn from others.
Exactly. I love that we are, I have a script, but we went off script because I was so inspired by what you shared at the moment. And let's go to the next question. How can leaders and their team members recognize when niceness is stifling authentic connection and progress?
I believe that you can often feel it in the room. Your body feels it even before your mind might catch it and know it. And one of the things that is a signal for me with teams is everything sounds so pleasant, but nothing is moving. I always...
It's like the sound of music for work.
Exactly. And that's concerning to me. My antennas go up when everything is just a little bit too pleasant and happy. Those people say, our team, we never disagree. We never fight. We never, go tit for tat with each other. Conflict is not a signal of something bad. Conflict, when done well, can be very healthy. in any relationship, but certainly in a team where actually, you know, I disagree with the point that you just made, or I actually think we should maybe consider, you know, doing it different this year for XYZ reasons. So, you know, one of the clearest signals, you know, is when harmony is high, but trust is really low, right? Meetings are polite, but decisions are somehow stalled, and you just notice like we're not getting anywhere, or we're discussing issues, but we're not resolving anything. So it's sort of, we're keeping it on the surface, like, okay, we all agree this is happening, but we haven't moved to, and what can we do about it? What's the so what, right? We got the what,
And
what's the
people,
so what, and what's the what now?
yeah, exactly. But also, I wanted to connect what you are just saying right now with Amy Edmondson and also with psychological safety, right? Because being in that space where you are not addressing what is needed, and I'm going to connect it also with the 2 Boeing air crashes that happened, I think 10 years ago, and it's part of Amy Edmondson's book, The Fearless Organization, where she talks about people not having the courage or the space or the psychological safety to address malfunction, to address how to better the process, to address something, maybe a bulb needed to be changed so that the malfunction didn't happen. So I want you to realize that applying the niceness, it doesn't only stifle the organization and the team members, it also has consequences for other people. And the last thing that you want is it to be connected to your team, your brand, or your individual self, where you are in the newspaper because of yada yada yada, this happened. So I just wanted to connect the dots regarding that.
No, you're absolutely right. One of the things that I talk about in I've been doing some video lessons tied to the book that I've been sharing on LinkedIn, and one of them I talk about.
Okay, let me stop you there. Let me stop you there, because I'm going to be the auntie at the moment right now. She has been doing some video lessons. Well, I'm just going to say that look her up on Instagram, look up the video lessons, because I applaud her for creativity, the way that she created a bite-sized thing. So if you don't know her, just follow her and connect with her and see how you can learn more, maybe on LinkedIn as well. I just wanted to underline that in bold letters.
I appreciate it. Yes, I've got the video shared on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, because, you know, people learn differently. And while some people will read or listen to a book, sometimes a bite-sized video of just the clear lesson and action you can take is helpful. But when you talked about the Boeing lesson from Amy Edmondson, and made me think about one of the lessons I talk about in the video of back in the 60s when NASA here in the US was launching the Challenger space shuttle. Very similar you know, what did psychological safety look like, such that there were clear issues, you know, that had very dire terminal consequences. And it's a similar example to Boeing of when we don't create a space where people feel they can step up and step out in leadership to say, hey, there's something I need to point to over here, or something's awry, or we need to take a look deeper at this. The consequences may not always be life or death in your industry, but certainly there are consequences of some sort. And it also makes me think of one of the things I tell leaders who I coach and train and work with is that people do pay attention to what never gets said out loud. And that silence usually tells you exactly where niceness has replaced courage, or the antithesis of nice, which is what I write about in my book, The Price of Nice, nerve, where niceness has replaced nerve, and nerve being that audacity to say those quiet parts out loud, to push for progress, to not be performative or surface level, but to go deeper and to lean into the discomfort. And, you know, simple practice for everyone here listening is to pause and ask, what are we not naming right now? In your next meeting, find a moment this year in 2026, one meeting this year or this quarter, to ask, hey team, what are we not naming right now? It can feel risky, but one simple prompt like that to your team can open the door to actual connection and people practicing nerve and to thinking differently. And so be the person who is brave and goes first and is the one to prompt that sort of different way of thinking in, your workplace. Be that person.
I just want to add one thing, and I noticed a comment from Lila. So Lila, I haven't forgotten you. I will share it soon, but what you just shared right now made me think of Maya Angelou's quote. I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never and never ever forget how you made them feel.
Right.
So who are you as a leader? And also the comment regarding Lila. Lila, thank you for being here live. I think that this has to do with regarding the managers not getting the proper training. And the training is often passive rather than experiential. So participants are unlikely to remember it, much less able to apply it. Yeah. It's those one-night stand things.
Yeah, adult learners. We can look at a multitude of studies and examples. As adult learners, we often need to have the experience. So thank you, Lila. Yeah. Absolutely. You need to give people those activities, those prompts, those scenarios to role play and play out so that people walk away with some dexterity with the information. You can't just talk at people, especially adult learners in the workplace. You cannot talk at them. You've got to give them the chance to practice it, to link it back to their own experience. So I love to do group breakouts where I ask people, think about a situation you recently had and to give them those prompts to do it either one-to-one in a group or in a group of 4 or 5 so that they are actually going through and, tapping into their own experience and brain and thinking about when this happened and how what we're talking about in the room, the tools I'm, giving can be applied to something real so that the next time it happens for them, they can think about how to apply it again.
Definitely, but also regarding, I forgot what I wanted to say.
Come back to it.
There are so many things that you just said, right? I'm gonna remember it. I just wanna I know what I wanted to say, because in your book, you already provide a checklist in each chapter where you support people into, now that you have read this is a summary of what you can do, so how you can apply it, right? Oftentimes people get
practices, I call them. Yep.
Exactly. Oftentimes people get a lot of information, but then when it comes to the actionable part, it's not always included. So I just wanted to put that out there. And for those of you who are interested, just go and read the book and you'll understand.
Yeah, I tried to keep it practical. I did. Yes.
Definitely. You definitely did that. So you emphasize centering marginalized voices. What are some actionable steps leaders can take to ensure that these voices are heard and valued? So you talked about the podcast, the books.
Yep.
What can they do? Maybe 1 or 2 tips what they can do above that, on top of that.
I think one of the first things is your mindset shift. I think the way you think about the world influences how you move and the actions that you take. So the first thing I would say is as leaders, please stop confusing invitation with inclusion. Being in the room.
No. I have to stop you. This is a sentence. I want to make you repeat it again. So slow down.
Stop confusing invitation with inclusion. And what I mean by that is being in the room does not mean having power or voice in the room. We've seen that too often, right? Especially as Black women. I think about how over the last several years, there have been, market efforts to have us in corporate boardrooms, in leadership teams. But that representation alone
Yeah.
isn't enough. Do I have voice? Do I have power? Do I have autonomy? Do I have authority? Do I have support to actually create progress based on the difference of perspective and experience that I bring into the room? And I've watched, people from marginalized groups on the edges get invited into the meeting, get invited into the corporation or the nonprofit meetings, only to be interrupted, ignored, or asked to educate everyone else, or asked to be a representative for every marginalized group under the sun.
We have a name for that. We have a name for that. What you don't want is to activate tokenization.
That's right.
And it puts a strain on the particular individual if they are the only person who are being representation of marginalized voices. So be very careful of using somebody as a token, even if it's unconscious. If there is only one, try to find out how you can multiply and how you can bring other voices in, because one person, I don't represent all the Ghanaians. And I mean, I literally don't. I'm too tall and too bold to be a Ghanaian. I mean, I'm like Bozema, who is, who is a boss in her own narrative. So I don't represent all of them, but I can have a conversation about, okay, this is the nuance when you are addressing with Ghanaians, but just having a conversation with one Ghanaian or one Black woman or one person with a disability doesn't mean that they know everything about that. Look at what happened with Barbie, because now people are having a discussion regarding the new toy the new Barbie that Mattel brought out, with being a representative for women with autism. Some people applaud, some people don't, because they don't want to be represented this way. So there is a paradox and a double slayer. But before you go to the next thing, I just want to share the props, because people were propping just because of the being invited doesn't mean that you are included. And Lila also said feel, right? And Maria also shared that even in legitimate formal leadership position, I felt more invited than actually having a decisive voice. So tiring. Maria. Thank you. Thank you.
Agreed. Like, so many of us feel that. And what you were just speaking to is the tokenization. That isn't inclusion, it's extraction. And I find that that's why we're brought into the room, is they want to extract our labor, extract our presence. And that is not helpful. And it is tiring. It is exhausting. And, leaders can shift some of that by redesigning how the conversations happen, rotating who's leading the meetings, collecting input before those decisions or discussions are had and made. Name and credit ideas explicitly when they happen. Too often, I, especially as a Black woman, experience that, where maybe I said something and then someone else does it 5 minutes later, and it's the greatest idea under the sun. And thankfully, I've had advocates and allies and sponsors in the room who will say, I liked that idea when Amira said it 5 minutes ago. That was a great idea. Amira, could you share a little bit more about what you said before? We'd love to hear it, since it was your idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was going to say,
go ahead.
I think that also really importantly is, protect people when their truth makes others uncomfortable, especially if you are in a position of power and privilege in that room, right? Psychological safety is not just about comfort, but it's also about protection. Whatever privilege and power you have, if you are in that room and you find that you have that seat and that ability, for those who might be at the margins, who are often unprotected, use your power and your privilege to stand alongside them and be that ally, that sponsor, that co-conspirator who makes some good trouble with them.
Definitely. I want to dive into a model that I know of think, feel, do, But you
Yeah.
added something else to it. So can you explain how the think, feel, do, revisit model works and
Mhm.
why it's essential for driving real change?
Yeah, it's a model that we use in the world of communications, which is where I spend my
Mhm.
days. And, I tell people communication is all about connection. That's how we connect as human beings. And many years ago, in my communications studies and my undergrad and master's work, I learned that what people will do at any given moment in time is determined by the stories that they are told. And the stories that they are told are determined by how we communicate and the
Mhm.
storyteller. And so Think, Feel, Do, Revisit is a framework where we draw from the worlds of sociology and psychology and behavior change and so
Mhm.
many other fields. And so it's really sort of this collective model that has been created through the years of how do you move people to action? How do you mobilize them in order to create change? And that change can be big or
Mhm.
small, right? I tell people it doesn't always have to be like table turning change. Sometimes it's being the person who asks one more question in the meeting, being the
Mhm.
person who invites one more voice that hasn't been represented. So in the model, think, the first section of the book is about this think portion, which is really about how do we interrogate our own assumptions, either
Mhm.
individually or as a collective, whether that's the collective culture of your organization, the collective culture of a country, or of a ethnicity or group of people who have a shared culture and understanding, and also
Mhm.
interrogating history. How did our organizations come to be? How did these norms that we accept come to be? And I talk a lot about that in the book, of even how did we come to this acceptance of nice as the way to be, as sort of this hallmark of behavior of, nice people will thrive, nice people will get ahead. So that's the think section. Interrogate assumptions and history. The feel section is about acknowledging the emotional impact, but also resistance. I think in the last few years, people have heard so much of, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think it's probably
Mhm.
something people have heard. And in the feel section, I talk a little bit about that, of how do we avoid avoidance? The avoidance of difficult conversations, the avoidance of the emotions that come up when you are the person who has to say the difficult or uncomfortable thing in order for progress to actually happen. The do section, that's where the behaviors, the tools, and the systems actually shift, right? If you can change your mind such that you can change how you move through those feelings, it will impact the do, the actions that you take in the world as a leader,
Mhm.
as an individual, as a part of a collective. And then the revisit section is where accountability lives, is the work that we need to do to move beyond nice and closer to nerve is cyclical. It will never end, right? This is sort of a forever journey of unlearning the norms and the things that we have been handed. And I tell people all the time, I may have written a book about going from nice to nerve, but I'm still practicing it, right? I'm
Exactly.
not an expert. I don't even like that word. If anything, I'm a guide of someone who has lived it and gone through it and is still living it and still going
Yeah.
through choosing nerve over nice in my own life, and using these same tools that I'm imparting to people to do the same and to constantly go back. And I think most organizations and people rush to do the action part and then
Mhm.
blame
Mhm.
people when nothing sticks. And
Exactly.
change isn't
Exactly.
linear, it's
Yeah.
relational. And if you
Yeah.
don't revisit and adjust based on what you
Mhm.
learned, you're not leading change, you're managing
Yeah.
appearances. And so that's why that fourth element of revisit is so important. You have to go back, reflect, and review on what you learned,
Mhm.
and then adjust and keep
Yeah.
revisiting over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that you have added the revisit part because oftentimes it's like they're playing the song of on to the next one, right? And it's about finishing a project, not taking the time to reflect, and then
Yeah.
we're moving on and not celebrating the in-between moments in that time and space, but also investing in proper training, in understanding that this is not, okay, we're doing a training and all of a sudden everybody is changed, or all of a sudden everybody knows how to apply the niceness towards nerve. And it takes time, and time needs to be invested. When building a team, it's very fundamental that you also invest in team building. And that's where training like yours, but also cultural intelligence has to be part of the space, not only focusing on the hard skills, but also making sure that a team is a team. You cannot assemble ingredients and put them on the table together and assume that everything will magically create a meal. I am not living in Disney, neither are you. So let's stop treating things like it's Disney, because I'm not part of a Disney or Pixar or whatever cartoon movie, right? We need to be realistic about it. Until there is a robot that can do that, we have to invest in that when it comes to team building as well. Yeah.
That's right. So true.
I just want to also bring out Maria, who says exactly it has to be with race, age, and even our origins. So tensions between countries, xenophobia, and other words, a very complex topic. Given the fact that Maria is already bringing in the topic that we actually had a pre-conversation about, and I'm not going to address why, but I am going to address, you have to watch the movie of Ava DuVernay. If you're a movie person or a video person, watch the movie Origins and you will understand. Or read the book Cast by Isobel. I think it's
Octavia.
Isobel. Right?
Oh, no.
No, right. Isobel Wilkerson.
Yes,
Isobel Wilkerson. Read that book. It's a very thick book, and that's why I'm also referring to the movie. Pick and choose whatever, whatever platform serves you best, because it will be very helpful to understand where things come from, where the origin comes from, and help to understand seeing things from a different perspective. That's it.
Wow. So good.
Okay.
I need an awesome card like you have.
Thank you. What advice do you have for leaders who find it challenging to balance being approachable with making bold and uncomfortable decisions?
I mean, I think that for many of us, and it takes years of work, in some cases a lifetime of work, but we have to sit with this idea that approachability is not about being liked. It's about being trusted. And I do think that part of this cultural obsession with nice is a lot about likability, right? You want people to like you, but that's not always effective, especially in workplaces. You don't need people to hate you, but there has to be trust and respect, and that's not the same as being liked. And I think leaders and think that they have to choose between being warm and being firm. But I think that's a false choice. You can listen deeply and still decide decisively. You can be empathetic and still hold boundaries. And one of the most liberating shifts is realizing that discomfort is not a leadership failure, right? But avoiding discomfort is. And that's why I talk in the book so much about the avoidance and why we do it, and some of the psychological elements that lead us to shift away from those hard things that might have people look at us as unlikable and things that make us personally uncomfortable. And you have to have the tools to sit with those feelings and to move through it to actually, create the change that you need for your team, for your workplace, or even in the world and in your community or in your own individual relationships. You have to be willing to focus on being trusted and respected, not necessarily liked. I think sometimes likability, if that is important to you, it can come eventually. But to me, what's more important in this world is being trusted and being respected, not necessarily liked.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Is there something that I haven't asked you?
Oh, one that I love that I talk about in the book a lot is, what does this niceness that we're obsessed with culturally, what does it cost people with the least amount of power? And I do think that that question changes, everything. It shifts the focus from intention to impact, from optics to responsibility. When leaders, ask that question consistently, you start to make very different decisions. And I think that some of it is that there's a tax on our humanity. And I think some of it is missed opportunity, is when you're so focused on niceness instead of nerve, people miss out on experiencing the fullness of who you are, the fullness of your potential in the world, when you are playing nice and playing small and shrinking instead of practicing nerve and being a disruptor, a challenger, being audacious, more audacious.
Maybe I need to make my nerve card. Maybe I need to get my nerve
card.
There you go.
Yes, that's what we need. I need a nice and a nerve card to start just visually.
I have reached the final question. So it's 2026. We have about 4 years. What is your wish for 2030 to humanizing the workplace and people choosing courage over comfort?
I hope that by 2030, feels so close and yet so far, that nerve and courage is no longer treated as something that's like a personality trait, but it's not something that a few brave people have. I don't want it to be something for the few. I want nerve and courage to be a leadership skill that is taught, that is practiced, that is expected, that is rewarded. And I want workplaces where that truth telling is also rewarded, where kindness is measured by outcomes instead of tone, right? Oh, you didn't say it nice, but what was the outcome? Like I mentioned with the coat and the being pulled outside. And where leaders stop hiding behind niceness to avoid the accountability that's needed. If we choose nerve and courage over comfort consistently, we don't just humanize work. I think we heal it. And I think that's what we need and what people are asking for more of, is to be fully seen and to heal this sort of relationship we have with our workplaces where we're expected to be cogs in a wheel, robots.
Yeah. I am ending my week with a heart full of joy, of niceness, of courage, of so much that you have shared during this conversation that, I mean, I could have brought off the awesome card every time, but I want to do it deliberate. I want to do it, sustainably. But I really love this conversation, and also the way that you share your personal story and you weave it into your book, and it becoming an inspiration, but also using stories of other people, weaving it in, make it more understandable. It's I know that we address leaders, but this is also an ideal book to read together with your team or team members, or even at home. We can also apply, the nerve in there, the courage in there, and apply it there as well. So the book is applicable for so many dimensions that I just want to applaud you for bringing it out. I know that you mentioned in the book that you wrote something about the quote. You wrote the title a few years ago, and for it to become fruitful in a way to have a book now, it's amazing that you have brought it out in a book. And I'm going to make sure that I'll share it in English, but also make sure to say something in Dutch as well, given that I speak both languages, to do something about it. So thank you, Amira, for being here and for sharing your wisdom. And for everybody who wants to learn more, when you're in LinkedIn, look her up. When you're on Instagram, look her up. When you're on TikTok, look her up. Find a platform where she's there so that you can connect with her. And if you don't know me yet, connect with me. I am more frequently on LinkedIn and on Instagram. I do have a TikTok account, but I'm not yet I'm there. I'm getting there.
The journey.
Exactly, we're learning. I also want to highlight the upcoming conversation. So within a few weeks, on Monday, the 26th, I have a conversation with my dear friend Marjolein Vlug, and we are going to talk about culture clash to culture match, where we are going to address Emily in Paris and Ted Lasso, both Americans in Europe who are, let's say, not really set up for success when it comes to coming from abroad and within Europe. It's going to be an interesting conversation. Definitely we'll think about how we can weave in the conversation of what I learned today, but so that I can also redirect the audience to rewatch this as well. But I really appreciate it. So thank you everybody for watching. And when you're watching the replay, just leave your comments. Maybe I can forward some of the questions to Amira. And like I said, connect, follow, like, read the book, do something so that we can move away from being too nice to being courageous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.